On the Regent, you might be given a question where you'll be asked to determine, you'll be given, let's say, 4 functions, and you'll be asked to determine which one has the greatest average rate of change over a specific interval, which one has the highest maximum over an interval, which one has the lowest minimum over the interval. Let's look at 2 questions like this. The first one we're going to look at has to do with average rate of change. It is question number 1 from the Spring 2013 Algebra 1 sample materials. Given the functions g of x, f of x, and h of x shown below, we have our 3 functions. One's an equation, one's a table, and one is a graph. The correct list of functions ordered from greatest to least by average rate of change over the interval x is greater than or equal to 0 and x is less than or equal to 3 is, and then we have 4 choices. So we needed to find, for g of x, f of x, and h of x, the average rate of change from 0 to 3. Let's do that. We'll start with g of x. So we have our 2 x values. They tell us 0 and 3. And in order to find the average rate of change, we need to do delta y over delta x, the change in y values over the change in x values. But now we only have our x values. To find the y values, or the g of x values, we're going to plug in the x values. We're going to do g of 0 is equal to 0 squared minus 2 times 0. 0 squared is 0, minus 2 times 0 is just 0. So we have our point 0, 0. And then we're going to do g of 3. G of 3 is equal to 3 squared minus 2 times 3. 3 squared is 9, minus 2 times 3 is 6. 9 minus 6 is 3. So the other point is 3, 3. And we're going to plug in. Change in y value is 0 minus 3. Change in x value is 0 minus 3. 0 minus 3 is negative 3. 0 minus 3 is negative 3. Negative 3 over negative 3 is positive 1. So the average rate of change from 0 to 3 for g of x is 1. Let's move on to f of x. So for f of x, we also need to find delta y over delta x, the change in y values over the change in x values. We have our 2 x values from the question. We have 0 and we have positive 3. We need to find those corresponding y values. So we can easily see that from the table. At x is equal to 0, f of x is equal to 1. And at x is equal to 3, f of x is equal to 7. So delta y over delta x, the change in y values is 1 minus 7. Change in x values is 0 minus 3. 1 minus 7 is negative 6. 0 minus 3 is negative 3. Negative 6 over negative 3 is positive 2. So the average rate of change from 0 to 3 of f of x is positive 2. And let's now look at h of x. We're going to do the same thing for h of x. We're going to find delta y over delta x. We have our 2 x values of 0 and 3. At x is equal to 0, h of x is equal to 2. At x is equal to 3, h of x is equal to 9. So delta y over delta x, the change in y values is 2 minus 9. Change in x values is 0 minus 3. 2 minus 9 is negative 7. 0 minus 3 is negative 3. Negative 7 over negative 3 is 7 over 3. Let's get that as a decimal. We're going to do that in the calculator. Alpha y equals enter to get a fraction. 7 over 3. And then math down to dec for decimal. And enter. 2.3 repeating. So for h of x, the rate of change from 0 to 3 is 2.3 repeating. So we see that the order from greatest to least by average rate of change over that interval is h of x, which is the greatest, because 2.3 repeating is greater than 2 and greater than 1. Then f of x, and then g of x. And this is choice 4. Let's look at another question. This is question number 22 from the January 2016 Algebra 1 Regent. This question, we want to find which one has a minimum that's less than the one shown in the graph. The graph representing a function is shown below. Which function has a minimum that's less than the one shown in the graph? So the minimum of the graph that's shown is over here. And this minimum value is negative 7. And we have 4 answer choices. We want to see which of the answer choices has a minimum that is less than negative 7. Let's start with choice 1. When you have a quadratic function, to find the x coordinate of the minimum value, you do negative b over 2a, then you plug in that x value to get the y coordinate, which is the minimum value. So let's do that. We're using the equation x is equal to negative b over 2a. and x is equal to negative b in this case is negative 6 over 2 times a in this case is positive 1. Negative 6 is positive 6 over 2 times 1 is 2. 6 over 2 is 3. So this is the x coordinate. If we plug in this x, we could solve for y. So y is equal to 3 squared minus 6 times 3 plus 7. Y is equal to 3 squared is 9, minus 6 times 3 is minus 18, plus 7. 9 minus 18 plus 7 is negative 2. So since negative 2 is greater than negative 7, choice 1 will not be the answer to the question. Let's move on to choice 2. Choice 2. For all absolute value functions, you might remember in the form y is equal to absolute value of x minus h plus k, where h comma k is the vertex. So in this function, our h value, it looks like it's positive 3, but since in the original equation we have a minus h, and this one we have a plus 3, we have to switch the sign, so our x coordinate is negative 3. And k, since this one it's a positive and this one's a negative, we have to make it a negative, so it's negative 6. Negative 6 is greater than negative 7. Choice 2 will not be the answer to the question. Let's move on to choice 3. Choice 3, we're going to do the same thing we did for choice 1, x is equal to negative b over 2a, and we're going to plug in that x value. So x is equal to negative 2 over 2 times a, which is 1. Negative 2 is positive, 2 over 2 times 1 is 2, 2 over 2 is 1. Now we're going to plug this into the original equation, solve for y is equal to 1 squared minus 2 times 1 minus 10. Y is equal to 1 squared is 1, minus 2 times 1 is 2, minus 10. 1 minus 2 minus 10 is negative 11, so y is equal to negative 11. And since negative 11 is less than negative 7, choice 3 is the correct answer to the question. You could check out choice 4. Let's just do that quickly. For choice 4, it's an absolute value function in the form y is equal to the absolute value of x minus h plus k. So our vertex is h comma k, which is 8 comma positive 2. Since positive 2 is greater than negative 7, choice 4 would not be the answer to the question.